Have you ever looked around your office and wondered what truths lie behind those polished smiles and polite greetings? In a place where ambition buzzes louder than conversation, what secrets might be hiding just beyond the hum of fluorescent lights? Let me take you to a quiet corner of a towering office building in downtown Austin. There, among glossy floors and muted voices, sits a girl no one really notices. Her name is Claraara Wyn. She's 23, young, soft-spoken, and often overlooked. Her job? Filing documents for the engineering team. Simple, mundane, invisible. But what if I told you that this seemingly unremarkable young woman had just uncovered something capable of toppling an empire? She's discovered that the fiancé of her billionaire CEO isn't who she claims to be. Behind that dazzling smile and poised elegance lies a professional spy, one who's been siphoning off millions in confidential data, weaving betrayal into the very fibers of the company's future. And Claraara, the girl no one listens to, now holds the key to exposing it all. Evidence that could unravel 8 years of relentless ambition. Evidence that could shatter the fragile illusion of loyalty at the highest level of power. Imagine it. You're fresh out of college, still uncertain how to speak up in a room filled with certainty. Everyone around you seems born to this world, fluent in confidence, sculpted by experience. They move with purpose, and you move quietly, almost like a shadow. But what happens when the quietest person sees something no one else does? When silence becomes strength? This is not just Claraara's story. It's a testament to every unseen voice in a world that only celebrates the loudest. Because sometimes, the words that change everything aren't shouted. They're whispered. 40 stories above Austin's shimmering skyline stands Drayden Systems, a technological monolith born from vision, grit, and a touch of obsession. Its founder, Luca Drayden, carved out a billion-dollar empire from code and sleepless nights. On the surface, it's a place of structure and precision, where high-stakes finance meets digital fortresses. But inside, just under the polished steel and glass, something fragile stirs. On the 32nd floor, the sun dips through floor-to-ceilinged windows, casting long golden lines across the room. And beneath that fading light, Claraara sits alone, the only one left, as the office empties. She didn't stay because she was told to. She stayed because she was hungry, not for approval, but for understanding. Her personal laptop hummed beside her as she ran scripts no one asked for, mapping the lifeblood of the company's network. She watched the patterns, the anomalies, the invisible tremors in a system that should have been unbreakable. Night after night, she listened to the building's digital heartbeat. And on this one, at precisely 6:47 p.m., that pulse faltered. That's when everything changed. Let me tell you about Luca Drayden. 34, charismatic, brilliant, a modern king in a suit cut from precision and paranoia. His journey from a cluttered garage to a skyscraper throne was the stuff of legend. His name was synonymous with cybersecurity. MIT students wrote dissertations on his architecture, nations paid to license his algorithms. A genius, when mixed with betrayal, curdles into suspicion. Luca had been burned before, by colleagues, by lovers, by people who said the right things and smiled the wrong way. So he built walls around his code, his company, and his heart. And behind one of those walls was Ava Rowe. Eva, 30, sharp as glass and twice as stunning, with a Wharton MBA and a resume that screamed power. She was everything a titan might desire. She knew how to speak investor, charm boardrooms, and soothe the ache of a man who'd forgotten how to trust. 8 months into their relationship, she gifted him a vintage clock. Something timeless, she said, for a man building the future. He believed her. And then there was Ms. Langford. 62, graceful, watchful. She was the first person Luca ever hired. His right hand, his quiet conscience. In this kingdom of code and calculation, she was the soul that remembered when it was just a dream. She noticed the details no one else did. She noticed Clara. She saw how the girl lingered after hours, how her eyes sparkled at the sound of encrypted conversation. And she asked herself, why would someone with a cybersecurity degree be tucked away in filing cabinets instead of firewalls? 4 people, 4 trajectories on a collision course none of them could predict. Because in a world that prizes the voice in the room, sometimes the truth hides with the ones who listen. As the city dims and another quiet Tuesday winds down, most of the 300 employees of Drayden Systems have returned home, to families, dinners, and the illusion of ordinary. But Claraara Wyn walks the corridors alone, each step taking her deeper into a secret that could either save the company or end it. The hallway on the 32nd floor stretched before Clara like a gauntlet. Her palms were damp, her pulse a relentless drumbeat in her ears. In her trembling hands, she carried a plain manila folder, a decoy. What she truly carried wasn't paper. It was a truth so heavy it bent the air around her. A secret that could detonate the very foundation of Drayden Systems and reduce everything Luca Drayden had built to ash. Each step toward his office felt like wading through wet concrete. She wasn't just walking toward a man. She was walking into a storm. Fear tightened around her throat, but it wasn't the fear of being wrong. It was the fear of being right, of watching someone she admired fall apart, of being the one to swing the axe. Clara had been invisible until now, and yet here she was, about to make a choice that would change everything. She knocked once. "Show me," Luca said, his voice steady but laced with an undertone of steel. It was the voice of a man who had built a billion-dollar empire not by guessing, but by sensing when something was off, and knowing when the truth was about to punch through the surface. Claraara opened her laptop. The screen glowed softly in the darkened office, casting harsh white light across both of their faces. The boardroom silence was shattered by the rush of data on her screen. "This is a network traffic log," she began, her voice thin but resolute. "From your office, every Tuesday and Friday at exactly 6:00 p.m., this device transmits roughly 2.3 gigabytes of encrypted data to an external server." Luca leaned in. The numbers meant something to him instantly. His mind, engineered for complexity, parsed the implications like a machine. "And the destination?" he asked. Claraara hesitated. "The IP resolves to a server farm in Romania, but the owner is masked." I dug deeper. 3 shell corporations later, it connects to Next Tech Solutions. Silence fell like a guillotine. Next Tech, Drayden's fiercest competitor, the company that had been suspiciously, repeatedly one step ahead. Exercise helped Drayden stabilize his unsteady. Luca's jaw clenched. His voice dropped an octave. "Where's the data being transmitted from?" Claraara lifted her hand and hovered her finger over the screen, then turned slowly to face the bookshelf behind him. Her gaze landed on the brass timepiece, the vintage clock Eva had gifted him. "From there," she said softly, "it has a hidden camera and a Bluetooth chip. It's perfectly placed to capture everything that happens in this room." Luca's eyes locked on the clock. The pendulum swayed gently, a golden metronome to the unraveling of his reality. His face didn't change, but his breath did. A fraction more shallow, a beat longer between each inhale. Claraara could see the thoughts spinning behind his gaze. 8 months of shared secrets, of dinners, of nights spent believing he'd found someone who understood the weight of what he carried. "There has to be another explanation," he murmured, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. It wasn't a protest, it was a plea. Claraara pulled a small USB drive from her pocket and placed it gently on the desk. I've been watching for 3 weeks. Every time Eva visits your office, there's a spike in network activity, and it always happens when you're not here. 20 minutes later, Claraara sat across from Margaret Langford. If Luca was the brain of Drayden Systems, Margaret was the heart. She had seen the company rise from scribbles on napkins to skyscrapers, and she had always noticed Claraara, not just for her silence, but for what her silence observed. Claraara's voice was steadier now. The camera uploads data every 6 hours, and Eva's badge shows 17 visits to Luca's office this week alone. Margaret's brows furrowed. That's 4 times the normal amount. 17 visits, most when he was in meetings elsewhere, Claraara said. She knows his schedule better than he does. Communications oversees the executive calendar. It wouldn't be hard for her to time it perfectly. Margaret leaned back slowly, her fingers steepled under her chin. And there's more, isn't there? Claraara nodded. Eva worked for Digital Flow Solutions in 2021. It was shut down for corporate espionage. She left after 3 months. Her name was buried in the records, but it's her. A long silence followed. It wasn't disbelief, it was the terrible weight of confirmation. If this is true, Margaret said, then this isn't just betrayal, it's infiltration. And then Claraara said what neither of them wanted to consider. Someone else is helping her. She has internal system access, admin-level permissions, knowledge of Luca's location at all times. She's not doing this alone. They moved quickly now, the urgency overtaking their shock. Logs were opened, access reports compared, timestamps layered against surveillance footage. And then Margaret's hand froze on her mouse. Clara, look at this. She pointed to the screen. Eva's access privileges were upgraded last month, but not by IT. It was approved manually. By Jasper Lynn, Luca's COO. His right hand for 6 years, his closest business confidant, the one who helped negotiate contracts, manage internal structures, and protect the company from external threats. Claraara's heart dropped. If Jasper's involved, they have access to everything. Outside, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Laughter, Eva's, light and bright. Then Luca's voice, warm and unsuspecting, drifted through the glass. They were back from dinner, walking straight into the eye of the storm, planning to work late, as they often did, still trusting each other completely, still unaware that the truth was no longer hidden in shadows. It had stepped into the light. "We have to tell him," Clara said, her voice barely louder than a whisper, trembling not from fear, but from the gravity of truth that sat heavy on her chest. "We will," Miss Langford replied with quiet conviction, her fingers calmly encrypting their findings onto a secure drive. "But not until we are absolutely sure. Because once these words leave our mouths, once the evidence is laid bare, there is no return, no undoing. His world will never be the same." Outside, footsteps came to a halt just beyond Luca's office door. Eva's voice filtered in, warm, affectionate, disarmingly ordinary. "I'll just grab that report for tomorrow's presentation." Miss Langford and Clara locked eyes. Tomorrow's presentation, the strategic roadmap of the company's next fiscal year. Tomorrow's document detailed innovations worth tens of millions to the right competitor. "We could let her take it," Ms. Langford said, her voice low and contemplative, "and see where it goes. Sometimes the only way to catch a betrayal is to let it unfold." But for Claraara, it wasn't just a strategic calculation anymore. It was personal. Because sometimes the hardest part of seeking justice isn't the danger or the risk. It's the heartbreak of watching someone you respect be broken by someone they trust. Let me take you back, 3 days earlier. Monday night, 11:23 p.m. The office was a cathedral of silence. The hum of the servers was the only sound that dared disturb the night. One light remained on, a soft glow in the corner cubicle. Claraara sat there, back straight, eyes focused, her fingers dancing across her personal laptop. She wasn't paid to be here. No one had asked her to do this. But when you love something, when your heart beats in rhythm with the data, you don't wait for permission, you follow curiosity. She'd been running a script she'd written in college, a simple, elegant code that listened not to words, but to the digital echoes left behind by activity, metadata, the passive footprints of a network breathing, legal, ethical, harmless, until it wasn't. That night, the code hiccuped, her screen flickered, and a red alert bloomed across the display. Unknown signal detected, Office 3201. Lucas' office. She ran the scan again, and again. Same result. A device embedded in that very office, transmitting 2.3 gigabytes of encrypted data regularly, directly to an IP address in Eastern Europe. The same amount, the same time, twice a week. Like a heartbeat. Claraara wasn't quiet just because she was shy. She was quiet because she watched. She saw things others missed. And what she'd noticed over the last 3 weeks wasn't random. Every time Eva visited Luca's office, she came bearing something. A coffee, a file, a small gift. She'd spend just a few minutes alone, Luca conveniently pulled away by an urgent call, always at the perfect time. At first, Clara had told herself it was romantic, CEO and communications directors stealing private moments, but now those moments reeked of orchestration, not affection. She dove deeper. The transmissions were precise. 6:00 p.m. every Tuesday and Friday, as predictable as clockwork. And tomorrow was Tuesday. She copied everything. Logs, timestamps, connection trails, to a USB drive. Part of her wanted to delete it all, walk away, pretend she didn't know. Life had been easier in the shadows, where she was just a file clerk no one bothered to question. But the part of her that dreamed of being a cyber sleuth, the part that believed in truth over comfort, wouldn't let her rest. She remembered what her father had said at graduation. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. Sometimes, the words that matter most are the ones whispered by the people no one sees coming. And so, Tuesday night, at 6:47 p.m., Clara stood outside Luca Drayden's office. Her folder was a prop, full of engineering reports that could wait, but the USB in her pocket held proof that couldn't. Inside, golden sunlight spilled across polished wood and glass. The skyline outside gleamed like circuitry. Luca sat at his desk, immersed in his dual monitors, his mind deep in code. Behind him, the vintage clock, Ava's gift, ticked softly, innocent, elegant, sinister. Clara knocked. "Come in," Luca called, distracted. She stepped in, and the air changed. This wasn't just about data. This was about dismantling a man's trust, about telling someone that the person who had made them feel whole again might be the one tearing them apart from the inside. "Mr. Drayden." Her voice almost vanished. He looked up, eyes soft with fatigue and something else, something rare. Humanity. For a flicker of a second, she saw not the tycoon, not the tech wizard, but a man who was simply tired, who had, maybe, finally let someone close enough to matter. "Claraara, what are you still doing here?" She swallowed hard. "Sir, there's a camera in your office, hidden. It's not yours." The silence was immediate. Total. Luca stopped typing. He turned slowly, blue eyes narrowing. "What did you just say?" And with those 7 words, the world shifted. By 8:30 p.m., the clock had been disassembled. Luca held the device in his palm, no bigger than a coin, impossibly advanced, the kind of surveillance tech only a government contractor could afford. It could record in 4K, transmit wirelessly, and run without detection for weeks. Ava stood beside him, perfect posture, perfect expression. "Oh my God, Luca," she said, voice laced with shock and pain. "I can't believe someone would do this to us." But Claraara saw it. Just for a second. The flicker. A glint of something between her mask and her truth. Relief. Eva wasn't surprised. She was freed, as if the charade was finally over. Luca's voice was cold now, controlled. "It wasn't the clock you gave me." "That's impossible," Eva said. "I bought that clock at that antique shop off South Lamar. Unless someone tampered with it before I gave it to you." And there it was. Not denial. Redirection. A subtle pivot from guilt to victimhood. An elegant lie with just enough air to breathe. "But who would know about that gift?" Luca asked, voice cracking. Eva turned to Clara, eyes hardening with calculated intent. "Who's been here late every night, who has access to the building after hours, who knows enough about our network to do something like this?" The accusation dropped like a stone in still water. Claraara's stomach twisted. 3 weeks of anonymity, 3 weeks of diligence wiped away in a moment. Suddenly, she was the threat. "Claraara," Lucas said, colder now. "You've been scanning our network. You uncovered a hidden camera that no one else knew existed. You stay late, alone." Her heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see. But all she could do was stand there, as her world cracked around her, and her voice, for once, wasn't enough. Eva's counterattack was surgical in precision, turned Clara closer, strength against her, make her intellect look suspicious, her dedication a red flag. The trap wasn't in the facts. It was in perception, in how fear and doubt wrap themselves around the truth like vines, choking out clarity until all that's left is suspicion. "Sir, Claraara's voice faltered. "How do you defend yourself when your diligence is twisted into motive, when everything you did right is now the reason they think you're wrong?" "You're new," Ava added softly, her voice honeyed with fake regret. "We don't really know much about your background or why you're here." Luca's eyes lingered on Claraara. Really lingered. And in that moment, she saw it, the silent equation in his mind. 23-year-old, fresh hire, 3 weeks of employment, file clerk, versus Eva, executive, 8 months of trust, MBA from Wharton, polished, composed, loved. "Sir," Clara whispered, finding her voice through the lump in her throat, "I know how this looks, but please, look at the evidence. The USB drive, the transmission logs, the metadata, everything is on there. If I were trying to frame someone, why would I hand you the very evidence that could clear me?" With trembling hands, she placed the drive on his desk like an offering, not just of data, but of belief, of trust, of her entire reputation. A beat of silence followed, so still she could hear the distant hum of traffic 40 floors below. Luca picked up the USB. He turned it over in his fingers like he was trying to read the truth written in the plastic. And then Claraara spoke, her voice breaking but strong in its resolve. "If you don't believe me, I'll resign tonight. I won't stay where my integrity is treated like a threat." She turned toward the door, spine straight, dignity intact even as her heart fractured into quiet pieces. This was what happened when the quiet tried to speak, when the invisible refused to stay hidden, when someone with no title dared to challenge the hierarchy of trust, Clara. Luca's voice stopped her cold. But she didn't turn. She couldn't bear to see doubt in his eyes. Not after everything. "I'll have security escort me," she murmured. "I wouldn't want anyone thinking I was stealing company secrets on my way out." The door shut softly behind her. Luca was left alone with the woman he thought he loved, and the truth he feared might be buried in the USB drive, still humming quietly in his machine. He sat motionless, watching as the data scrolled across his screen. Numbers, codes, logs, metadata. Cold, clinical, undeniable. Each packet of information screamed what his heart couldn't yet accept. Timestamps aligned perfectly with Ava's visits. Encrypted files sent to Romanian servers. And then, embedded deep within Claraara's log files, source code fingerprints, advanced security tags, unique digital watermarks. This wasn't a guess. It wasn't paranoia. It was a roadmap of betrayal, written in binary. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message. Omega X source code ready for transfer. Jasper confirmed access tomorrow morning. Luca froze. Omega X, his crown jewel, a proprietary security framework that could revolutionize financial safety systems. A $300 million 0-cents asset, and only 5 people in the entire company even knew of its existence. Eva was not one of them. His hands shook as he opened his contacts. The sender's number belonged to Eva's personal cell. He grabbed his phone and dialed. "Margaret, I need a full background report on Eva Rowe tonight, and I need you to find Claraara Wyn." He exhaled, the weight of realization collapsing his defenses. "I owe her more than an apology. I may owe her this company." In her tiny apartment, Claraara sat at her kitchen table, the same clothes from last night clinging to her like guilt. Her laptop blinked sleepily, untouched. Her thoughts spiraled in painful loops. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Luca's face, not angry, not cruel, just unsure. The doubt cut deeper than any accusation. Her phone vibrated to no number. "Claraara, this is Margaret Langford. Can you come back to the office? There's something you need to see." An hour later, Clara stood in Miss Langford's office, staring at documents that read like the blueprint of betrayal. "What'd you do?" Miss Langford asked over the radio transmitter. "Eva Rowe," Margaret began. Real name, Eva Kowalski, born in Pittsburgh. Legally changed her name in 2019. MBA is real. But she placed an old newspaper article on the desk. Digital Flow Solutions 2021. 3 employees terminated for corporate espionage. Ava was listed among them. No charges filed. But Claraara didn't need a conviction to see the truth. Her instincts had been right. And this, Margaret continued, flipping to a bank record. Cayman Islands account, money transferred from the same shell company that owns the Romanian server, the same one you traced. Clara asked, heart pounded. "Where's Mr. Drayton?" "In his office. Planning something. I've never seen him plan before." "Claraara, he knows you were right. He saw Eva's message about Omega X." Margaret laid out the plan. Today, Drayton Systems would host a private product launch for Omega X. But it wouldn't be the real thing. It would be a trap. A digital honeypot laced with trackers, designed to follow any unauthorized data extraction straight to its source. "They won't even know they're stealing a decoy," Margaret said. "And when they do, it'll be too late." Claraara blinked. "He wants me there?" "He doesn't just want you there. He needs you to see it through." "I can't," Clara whispered. "Not after last night. Not after being treated like I was the one betraying him." Margaret stepped closer, voice firm but kind. "Claraara, You have a degree in cybersecurity. Your job is to protect this company's digital assets. The only mistake anyone made was putting you in the file room instead of where you belonged." Clara's voice cracked. "But what if I'm wrong? What if I ruin something real between them over circumstantial evidence?" "Then we find out together," Margaret said. "But in 62 years, I've learned to trust two things: data and instinct. And yours haven't failed yet." The main conference room was transformed. Massive monitors lined the walls like a tech command center. Executives filled every leather chair, their attention sharp, unaware that a storm was about to break. Clara slipped into the back, instinctively taking her usual shadowed seat, but Lucas saw her, and for the first time, he nodded. A silent acknowledgement, a quiet apology. Eva sat in the front. Impeccable, serene, ready to steal everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," Luca began, "today marks a revolution in financial security. Omega X represents 3 years of development and $300 million, 0 cents, in projected value." As he spoke, Claraara watched Eva, not her reactions, but her muscles, her timing, the subtle shifts, the finger hovering just a second too long over her phone when source code was mentioned. Luca closed the presentation. "The source code will be available for internal review at 10:30 a.m., he announced. The bait was laid. Claraara's laptop lit up. 10:25 a.m. Alert. An executive-level login accessing the Omega X development server, real-time activity flowing fast. Claraara's fingers flew. Encrypted downloads. Masked transfers. It was slick, professional, but it was being traced every step of the way. Then her screen flashed red. Access credentials, Jasper Lynn. He was stealing the source code while sitting calmly in the conference room, asking Luca questions about deployment timelines. And then, on the main presentation screen, unauthorized data extraction detected. User jasper.linen@drayden.com. The room erupted. Luca pulled up the live security feed. There, on the screen, was Jasper's office. His computer logged in, files copying, passwords active, the perfect heist, caught in 4K. Jasper stood. "That's not me. Someone cloned my access." But it was too late. His betrayal was now part of the record. And Clara, once just a quiet clerk, was the one who made it possible to see the truth. The evidence was irrefutable. Jasper's files were caught mid-transfer, the red alert glowing on the massive screen like a digital alarm bell. The real Jasper stood motionless now, his face slick with sweat. He raised his hand slightly, his voice trembling with desperate disbelief. "This is a setup," he stammered. "Someone's framing me." But his phone betrayed him. A chime echoed in the dead-silent conference room. He fumbled for it, but it was too late. On screen, the text appeared clearly, Eva's voice tight with panic. "Jasper, they know. Abort everything, now." All heads turned. The room, thick with tension, pivoted toward Eva. Her mask of poise shattered. Just for a moment, and beneath the high-gloss persona of a communications expert, the true Yvette Kowalski emerged. Not a partner, not a professional, but a calculating corporate operative caught in a trap she didn't expect. "Security to conference room A," Luca said into his phone, his tone cold, stripped of all affection. "And send a team to office 3156. Mr. Lynn seems to be in 2 places at once." Eva stood, her expression shifting from panic to icy calculation. She scanned the room like a chess player cornered on the board, searching not for forgiveness, but for exits. "But Luca, this isn't what it looks like, please." "No," he interrupted, his voice sharp enough to cut steel. "It looks like the woman I loved has been selling my company's most valuable secrets to our fiercest competitor. and it looks like my business partner has been helping you do it." At Claraara's workstation, her screen continued its digital pursuit. The tracking software mapped the stolen data's path from Romania to Singapore to a secure data vault owned by none other than Next Solutions. Luca turned back to the room, his voice steady but electric with fury. "Next Solutions has been receiving confidential data for the last 8 months. Every lost contract, every undercut proposal, every failed deal, explained." Just then, the security team burst into the room. Jasper made a break for the exit, but the illusion of power faded fast. He was no spy, no predator. Just a man in a tailored suit who overplayed his hand. Security tackled him easily, and his briefcase hit the ground, scattering its contents. Encrypted drives, burner phones, false IDs. Eva didn't flinch. She was already resetting her game board. "I want my lawyer," she said coldly. Luca's gaze lingered on her. Not with anger now, but quiet devastation. 8 months of shared time, laughter, intimacy, all a fabrication. "You'll have your lawyer," he said almost gently, "and I'll have my company back." The conference room emptied. The traitors were escorted out, their fate sealed not by revenge, but by truth. No raised voices, no heroics, just the simple, powerful weight of accountability. But for Clara, the victory wasn't in the takedown. It was in being believed, in knowing that her voice, once dismissed, had finally been heard. The building felt lighter, not just relieved, but healed, like it had exhaled after months of holding its breath. The FBI completed its sweep, the evidence was logged, the damage was assessed. And Claraara stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, staring down at Austin's lights, remembering every moment she had questioned herself, every late night, every decision to do the right thing when it would have been so much easier to stay quiet. Luca stepped into the room behind her. She didn't turn. Some truths are easier spoken when the speaker isn't looking. "Claraara," he said, his voice stripped of all corporate sheen. "I owe you an apology, one I may never fully be able to give." She nodded, still watching the city. "You were protecting someone you loved. I understand." "No, you don't," I responded. He stepped closer. She saw his reflection in the glass, shoulders heavy, eyes older than they were. "I wasn't protecting Ava. I was protecting my ego. I couldn't handle the idea that someone so new, so young, might see what I missed. I couldn't admit I'd been fooled." Claraara finally turned to face him. "You've been betrayed before," she said gently. "Miss Langford told me. That kind of history, it makes people wary." "But I wasn't being cautious," Luca said, shaking his head. "I was being arrogant. I trusted Ava because she made sense in my world. She looked the part, said the right things, made me feel understood. And then, after we made..." He paused. You represented something I didn't know how to process. Quiet competence. Intelligence that didn't wear a name tag. You were what this company needs, and I nearly threw you away because you weren't loud about it." He walked to his desk and picked up a sealed envelope. "This is a formal offer, Chief Security Analyst. You'll report directly to me, access to all systems, full authority to investigate threats, internal and external." Clara took the envelope with trembling hands. 3 weeks ago, she was sorting files. Now she was being handed the job she'd dreamed of since she was a sophomore. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "You already said it," he replied, "with your actions." He sat down, exhaling. "You saved this company, not just financially, ethically. Ava and Jasper had access to everything. If they'd finished their transfer, we would have lost it all." Claraara looked down at the offer, her hands gripping it like a lifeline. May I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you believe me right away? The data, it was airtight. Lucas sighed deeply. Because believing you meant admitting I'd been living a lie. It meant everything I trusted, my judgment, my instincts, were wrong. It's easier to doubt a new voice than to question everything you think you know. She nodded. That's what quiet people learn early. Sometimes, data can't compete with perception. I won't make that mistake again, Lucas said solemnly. Promise me this. If you ever see something wrong, say it. No fear, no hesitation, even if it involves me. I promise, but promise me something too. Anything. Promise you'll listen, not just to what's convenient, but to what challenges you. Sometimes the best information comes from where you least expect it. They shook hands, not as CEO and file clerk, but as equals. Partners. Claraara's new office sat on the 35th floor. From her desk, she could see all of downtown Austin and the hills beyond. But her real focus wasn't the view. It was the 4 glowing monitors filled with streaming security data, analysis algorithms, and encrypted federal comms. Her nameplate read Claraara, Chief Security Analyst. But the title wasn't what had changed. It was her presence. She still spoke softly, still moved quietly, but her silence no longer came from uncertainty. It came from power, from clarity, from confidence earned the hard way. In her first month, she'd implemented 47 new protocols, created AI-based threat response systems, and forged alliances with the FBI, NSA, and international cyber task forces. A knock on her door. She turned. A young intern, barely 22, stood in the doorway, nervous, wide-eyed, exactly where she'd been, just weeks ago. I'm sorry to bother you, Miss Wyn, he said, holding up a laptop. But I noticed something strange in the network logs. Claraara smiled. Not wide, not loud, just enough. Come in, she said. Let's take a look together. And just like that, the quiet voice became the one everyone listened to. Claraara smiled softly, the memory of her own hesitant steps toward Lucas' office just a month ago surfacing like a tender echo. Now, standing tall in her new office, she nodded to the young intern standing nervously at her door. Come in, she said warmly. Show me what you found. He approached hesitantly, holding out his tablet like it contained something far less important than it did. It's probably nothing, just a minor security anomaly in the logs. But it stood out. As he explained, Claraara listened intently, and in that moment something inside her shifted. She wasn't just the one who found problems anymore. She was the one others trusted to report them to. She had become the presence she once needed. You did exactly the right thing, she told him. In cybersecurity, there's no such thing as a stupid observation. The smallest anomaly can be the early signal of the biggest threat. She saw in his face the same mixture of doubt and potential that had once filled hers. Intelligent, capable, waiting for someone to believe in him. What's your background? She asked. Computer science from UT, focus on network security, but I'm just an intern, so I didn't know if... Clara held up her hand, stopping him gently. Never diminish your instincts because of your title. Some of the most important discoveries in cybersecurity come from people who weren't even supposed to be looking. Fresh eyes see what seasoned eyes learn to overlook. She spent the next hour walking him through how to document, validate, and present findings. As the sun set, casting warm orange and violet hues across her office walls, Claraara worked not because she had to, but because she was doing what she loved. Her laptop chimed, a secure message from Luca. Monthly security briefing tomorrow at 9 a.m. Your recommendations for the Singapore network? She typed back confidently. Ready. 3 vulnerabilities identified with solution proposals for each. His reply was instant. I don't know how we ever made international decisions without you. She leaned back, scanning her space. Monitors displaying live security dashboards, framed certificates from cybersecurity agencies, photos from global summits. But what made her proudest wasn't on any wall. It was the knowledge that now, when someone quiet and observant found something worth speaking up about, she would be the one listening. Because the real power in finding your voice isn't just in speaking. It's in helping others feel safe enough to speak too. The Austin Convention Center pulsed with energy. Over 3,000 cybersecurity professionals, researchers, and executives gathered under one banner: Emerging Voices, Established Excellence. Experts spoke throughout 3 days, and within a 72-hour backstage, Clara adjusted her blazer mic. In 10 minutes, she'd take the stage before the largest security summit in North America. 6 months ago, she struggled to speak in front of 5 co-workers. And now she would present her findings to a global audience. Please welcome Claraara Wyn, the moderator's voice boomed, Chief Security Analyst at Drayden Systems, presenting her research on detecting internal corporate espionage. She walked out, measured steps, composed expression, a quiet fire in her chest. The applause was real, and this time she knew it wasn't luck, it was earned. She began not with metrics, but with memory. How many of you have had a junior employee bring you concerns you weren't ready to hear? Scattered laughter, but the kind that says, we've all been there. 6 months ago, I was that junior employee. I stayed late, ran scans out of passion, not obligation. And I discovered something that would eventually save my company, not because I had more experience, but because I was willing to notice what others had learned to ignore. She told her story, not as a hero's journey, but as a lesson in organizational psychology. The operation wasn't advanced because of its tools. It succeeded because it understood trust. It knew leaders would protect relationships over evidence, that a 23-year-old file clerk wouldn't be believed, even with the data. Claraara's voice grew steadier. But here's what we learned. The most secure systems aren't built on firewalls. They're built on culture. Organizations that value insights over ego, data over title, humility over hierarchy, those are the ones that thrive. The room leaned in. She saw execs taking notes, tech leads whispering ideas to each other. Every company has a Claraara Wyn, she said. Someone sharp, quiet, maybe inexperienced, but watching, listening, seeing. The question is, have you built a culture that invites their voice? And to the young professionals in the room, she said, your insight matters. It's not diminished by your title. It's not invalidated by your age. The world needs your perspective and your courage. When she ended, the applause didn't fade quickly. It surged. Afterward, a swarm of connections formed. A startup CEO offered consulting. The Department of Homeland Security requested a private briefing. Professors invited her to guest lecture. But one encounter stood out. A young man, barely older than a college freshman, approached her nervously. Ms. Wyn, my name is David Chen. I'm a junior developer at a firm in Dallas. I've been noticing strange activity in our network, but I'm scared to say anything. I'm new and, well, no one really listens to new people. Claraara saw herself. David, can you show me what you found? They spent 30 minutes going over his data. His analysis was sound. His instincts were spot on. He had uncovered what appeared to be a data exfiltration attempt, high level and potentially dangerous. This is excellent work, she said. You need to report it. What if they think I'm overreacting? Claraara leaned in. Let me tell you what I wish someone had told me. The cost of being wrong is small, but the cost of staying silent, that can destroy everything. Document it, present it clearly, and trust yourself. You did the work. Now have the courage to share it." She handed him her card. "If they won't listen, call me. I know people who will." By the end of the day, she'd spoken with over a dozen early career professionals, all with real findings, all unsure of how to voice them, and 8 executives who vowed to restructure their feedback systems to hear their youngest staff. 3 days later, back in her office, Claraara was reviewing protocols for Drayden's European expansion security that would protect billions in global transactions. A knock at her door. Luca walked in, coffee in hand. "How was the conference?" "Productive," she smiled. "I've been asked to keynote in Europe, and the Department of Defense wants to test our protocol nationwide." "That's incredible." He sat down. "But how are you doing? Not professionally, personally. This is a lot." "Fast." She thought for a moment. 6 months ago I would have been overwhelmed. Not because I couldn't do it, but because I didn't know I deserved to. I doubted everything. But now, I know that expertise isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions, following evidence, and believing in your own voice, even when it shakes. Luca nodded slowly. "You've become everything I hoped for, and more." "Actually," she said, "I wanted to talk to you about a mentorship program. Something for new hires, especially those who don't speak up right away. A structure where they can submit concerns, pitch ideas, contribute to strategy before they lose their confidence." He smiled. "That's brilliant and necessary. The next Claraara Wyn might already be in our halls, watching, waiting. We just need to make room for her to speak." She looked around at her security dashboards, her accolades, her framed credentials. But those weren't what filled her with pride. It was knowing she was building something better for others like her. "You know what I've learned, Mr. Drayden?" she said as the sun poured through the glass. "The most powerful thing about finding your voice isn't proving you were right. It's creating a world where others feel safe to be right, too." And as the city buzzed outside, Claraara returned to her desk, not just as a protector of data, but as a guardian of voices still waiting to rise. Because the strongest defense in any organization isn't firewalls. It's the people we empower to whisper when it matters most.